Good evening, members. Please be seated. Before we commence proceedings, may I take opportunity to advise you that if the fire alarm does sound, please remain seated and members of Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. These proceedings will be webcast and recorded by the Council, but will anyone else be recording or filming them? I see one hand raised. I ask so that people at the meeting are aware that this will be happening. Agenda item 1. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Higson, Jenkins, Baldock, Khadka, Mackay, Reardon, Summerskill, Jones, Forecast and Russell. Are there any other apologies for absence? Councillor Jeffrey.
Councillor Couch is stuck on the motorway. She will be here if she can get here.
Right, we'll assume that'll be a late arrival. Right, that's all we know about at the moment. Okay, thank you very much. Agenda item 2, are there any applications for dispensations? Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There were no such applications.
Thank you. Are there any disclosures of interest by members? Can we clarify that? Can we clarify that? Have we all got an interest? No is the answer at this stage. Are there any disclosures by officers? No. Agenda item 4. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. Agenda item 5. Is it agreed that the items on the agenda be taken in public as proposed? That is agreed. Agenda item 6. There are no petitions this evening. Agenda item 7. Local government reorganisation. Submission of business case to government. I call upon Mr. Sean Turner, a local resident who wishes to speak on this item. Mr. Turner, you have 3 minutes to address the Council.
Mine is.
Yeah. Good evening, members. Before I address the legal defects in this proposal, I must put one matter clearly on record. Any proposal sent to ministers becomes a collective decision of every councillor on every tier. Each of us carries responsibility for legality of what we authorise. I cannot allow my name to be attached to the proposal that is defective in law. Tell me when. Are we starting the clock again? I'm setting out 6 legal grounds that make it unlawful for this council to proceed with Kent's reorganisation. Before I address the legal defects in this proposal, I must put one matter clearly on record. Any proposal sent to ministers becomes a collective decision of every council and every tier. Each of us carries responsibility for the legality of what we authorise. I cannot allow my name to be attached to a proposal that is defective in law. I'm setting out 6 legal grounds that make it unlawful for this council to proceed with Kent's reorganisation. These are not opinions, these are statutory breaches that council is duty-bound to confront. 1. The invitation carries no mandate whatsoever. Section 2 of the 2007 Act is voluntary. It creates no duty and no obligation on any council. No councillor here is required by law to participate, and no officer can claim compulsion. If you proceed, you do so by choice, not by statute, and therefore you also carry the liability for the consequences. 2. Kent has already acted outside its powers. Significant proprietary spending and work took place before any valid proposal, before consultation, before the lawful council decision. The High Court in Gordley v Kent, CC 2017, was explicit. Preemptive spending on reorganisation is ultra vires. 3. The consultation requirement has been bypassed. Section 6 of the 2007 Act requires a full public consultation before proposals are formed. Mosley v Haringey makes it clear it must include alternatives and be generally open. Kent's Let's Talk Kent exercise is not a lawful consultation. Models were chosen first, the public were told afterwards. A reorganisation built on unlawful consultation is void. 4. Predetermination is also proven. Kent's own documents refer to preferred models, shadow councils and implemented timelines. That is predetermination, which destroys the legality of any subsequent consultation and opens the door to judicial review for procedural unfairness. 5. Statutory transparency duties have been breached. Under the Openness Regulations 2014, every background document must be available. Legal advice, financial risk assessments, KPMG outputs, structural diagrams and governance modelling have not been published. A council that proceeds without publishing its evidence is acting unlawfully. Number 6. The refused postponement makes any reorganisation unlawful. The Local Government Act 1972 fixes election cycles. There is no power in the 2007 Act to postpone elections to facilitate reorganisation. Kent still attempted to do so and only withdrew after residents legally challenged it. On the 5th of February 25, the Minister confirmed there is no statutory mandate for postponement. Kent's own papers called postponement a necessary step for reorganisation. If the necessary step is unlawfully and rejected, then the entire reorganisation cannot lawfully continue. The House of Lords confirmed the same on March 24, 25. Peers tabled fatal motions stated on record that there is no democratic mandate, no legal authority and no constitutional basis for linking reorganisation with interference in elections. They relied on FOI evidence supplied by residents, evidence this council was choosing to ignore. If Parliament itself says the government lacks mandate, this council certainly cannot claim one. Other councils, including Portsmouth, have already refused reorganisation because there's no legal duty to participate. The correct and lawful course is decline the invitation until full legal authority...
I'm afraid we'll have to stop you there. I'm afraid that is your time, even though we've given you some extra time to do the speaking.
I had one line left. Full public...
I have asked you to stop.
Okay. Thank you.
I now call upon Councillor Jeffrey to move his motion relating to local government reorganisation, submission of business case to government.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So local government reorganisation, as we know, is a process being driven by central government. It's going to replace second-tier councils and county councils with a smaller number of unitary councils. The government also wants us to, every part of the country, to have strategic mayoral authorities, i.e. a mayor, and they think this is the best way to deliver change and drive economic growth and so forth. They may or may not be right. We've had a year of uncertainty and distraction, which is rather annoying, and a year of work. There are currently 5 business cases being circulated or being proposed by various councils across the county, all with different geographical boundaries, and we are asking you to back option 3A, the only one that gives 3 unitaries across Kent. We're presenting this as a motion to full council, so the council can debate it as a whole, and this motion is to recommend 3A to Cabinet, i.e. making sure that full council gets a vote. Obviously, full council could amend the motion if you wanted to. Under our constitution, the decision on the recommendation to national government is a cabinet function, so the cabinet will meet on Wednesday to make a decision. Just to remind people, there are 2 reasons for LGR, devolution and the simplification of local government. Devolution, I think, is the big prize. Money and power coming to Kent from central government. I think that's a good thing to happen. You'll have seen some of the papers around finances. LGR as a whole should be broadly positive to local government finances in the long term, but it's not going to solve demand or the challenges around central funding. And in the model, the financial models you've seen, council tax is assumed to be harmonised at the midpoint, which for us in Maidstone, given we've got the second highest in council tax levels in the county, is probably or could be a good thing for our residents. But that decision is for the new unitary authority to make, not for anybody else. 3A, we believe, provides the best balance between finances, democratic representation and alignment with the rest of the public sector. The latter point is important. 60% of the budget will be social care. So having alignment with the health and care partnerships, there's a clue in the name, will help with synergy, efficiency and so forth, and clearly benefit residents. It will also mean we've got a good voice in those health and care systems. And it's also worth noting that the health part of those health and care systems are based around the geographies of NHS trusts, which are hard to move because they're in turn based around hospitals. There is a downside around the 3A option in terms of the other parts of our West Kent bit have a large amount of green belt, which is why we need the Strategic Mayoral Authority, because that will give Kent Mayor the chance to flex where the housing allocations are. In terms of democracy, number of electors would be about 5,000. That's significantly more than present, 2 or 3 times more than we have at present. And therefore casework would be 2 or 3 times higher. My experience of the county level is there's far less casework, so I'm basing my assessment on borough level casework. The payback and the efficiencies are not quite as good as 1A, but what price democracy? And the efficiencies are much better than the 4 and 5 unitary authorities. 1A as an option has been put forward by KCC. I think it's utter madness. 12,000 electors per council, 5 times the number we have at present, making, I think, democracy unworkable and certainly representation unworkable. And it's not compliant with the government's requirements. It can't deliver the mayoral authority and so forth. 4A was put forward by Medway. It's interesting. Maidstone-on-Sea, who knows? I think it splits East Kent into 2. So ultimately what I want to do is to recommend the motion as per the papers, and I hope that Council will support it. Thank you.
Councillor English.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like the gentleman seeking the way to Tipperary, we would not necessarily start from here. But contrary to the assertions made by the representative of the Heritage Party, we're not doing this because we think it's something we'd like to do. We are doing this because the government has set out a very clear process and has made it quite clear that if we don't engage with the process, that won't mean local government reorganisation doesn't happen. It just means we won't have any input into it. Some assertions have been made this evening on imaginative interpretations of the law, and I do say they are very imaginative interpretations of the law. We are where we are, and the question we have to ask ourselves as a council is not necessarily what is the best option, but what is the most acceptable option that we can live with as residents, councillors, the wider public. A lot of thought has gone into this, not just by the current administration, but to give them credit, the previous administration. And we have looked at options. We actually did explore a North Kent option for a while, but it became quite clear that the North Kent Authority did not actually wish to take that forward with Maidstone included. So that's why we spent a lot of time looking at the West Kent option. The West Kent option is not perfect. However, it is important for this council that we do try and deliver the lowest burden of health and social care costs that we can, because anyone who's followed the recent history of upper tier local government in Britain will know that what is crippling county councils and unitary authorities up and down the country is the burden of social care costs. If we ended up in a council that took in significant parts of East Kent, our social care costs would be higher, and any savings we receive from the synergy of boundaries would be non-existent. In addition, we would be in the front line of certain issues that, being a West Kent authority, we would not be so exposed to. We do need to push on with devolution once this is got, because, as the leader of the council said, one of the chief prizes for devolution is reinstating strategic planning. As people like Councillor Spooner will know, the gap in strategic planning at a Kent level has left every district exposed to the vagaries of the winds of fortune and Secretary of State and business. We need strategic planning function back, and we need a strategic input into transport, which we have not, and other services which we have not had for some time. So I commend the...
Thank you, Councillor English. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 12.9.1, there will now be a debate on the motion, during which the motion may be amended. To assist the debate, group leaders were asked to submit questions of a technical nature in advance to enable answers to be prepared, and a question and answer sheet has been circulated. Members may still ask questions during the debate, and with my permission, officers will respond as necessary. So, at this stage, speakers so far, before I ask you to speak, let me just take down a number of hands. Councillor Reid, Councillor Harper, Harwood, Springett, Cook, Thompson. I'll now start with Councillor Parfitt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'd also like to thank the leader for choosing to bring what is a cabinet decision to full council, allowing all of us to take part in the debate. I want to make one point absolutely clear. The fact that I'm not minded to support this recommendation is not a criticism of the current leadership and the officers who have worked so hard and diligently to bring forward this proposal. I fully appreciate you are between a rock and a hard place. The government has set a requirement and a deadline for a response. So just as we had to create a local plan, when we were in administration, you too must submit a proposal for reorganisation. I recognise that the work has been done in good faith and under considerable pressure. However, despite that, I have grave reservations about the preferred option. My first and overriding concern is that this model risks placing the overwhelming burden of future housing growth on Maidstone. We all know that in West Kent, large areas are tightly constrained by green belt and protected landscapes. If we move to a unitary arrangement where these constraints remain concentrated in the western part of the new authority, the path of least resistance becomes obvious. Maidstone could end up taking a disproportionate share of housing simply because we have fewer protected landscapes. That imbalance could become baked into long-term strategic planning, and I believe that risk is very high. My second concern is around debt allocation, particularly Kent County Council's debt. We still do not have clarity on how that debt will be divided between the new unitary authorities. Depending on the methodology used, Maidstone residents could find themselves carrying an unfair share of financial liabilities that we did not create and cannot control. Until that picture is clear, we are effectively being asked to sign a blank cheque. These two issues, housing distribution and debt allocation, carry long-term consequences for our residents, our services and our financial resilience. At this stage, those consequences remain uncertain. To reiterate, my decision is not about politics, personality or the efforts for those who have worked so hard to bring this forward. It is simply that the risks to Maidstone are very great and the answers we need are not yet in place. For those reasons, I am reluctant to support the recommendation. However, I am genuinely interested in hearing the views from across the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Harper.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think I speak not only for my group, but probably for a lot of residents who wonder why local government needs to be reorganised when there is no demand for it. The reorganisation is not needed, necessary, or addresses the real issues facing local government. You can have devolution without the need to reorganise. Councils of 500,000 plus people are hardly local. People complain now that Maidstone Council is too remote for decision making. What about in the future? What are the real issues local government's facing? Well, as was raised, chronic underfunding, loss of control. Only today, the government has announced that it wishes to decide all planning applications for over 150 houses, meaning that no one in councils will have any input unless it's under 150 houses. That's published in the Times today. Centralisation and ridiculous housing targets, back to name a few. Instead, tonight we're offered a mega council, either going to Sevenoaks or Dungeness, councillors representing not local communities and neighbourhoods, but wards more than twice the size of our current wards, with up to 15,000 voters or 20,000 people. A reduction in local democracy, where decisions on local services will be made by remote councils, but no solution to the funding crisis. This is the end, effectively, of local government as we have had since 1894. People will be remote from their councillors and council. Councillors will probably struggle to know their areas and will probably end up being full-time paid. We oppose this whole concept. However, tonight we have a fait accompli. So we do need to choose the best of a bad bunch. The two best ones are either heading off to West Kent or going with Ashford, Hythe and Romney Marsh. There seems to be the choice between NHS cohesion or the potential around housing. But given the government's going to take control over any housing application over 150 houses, that's a bit of a red herring now. I personally like the idea of, the Hythe to Dungeness area, Maidstone on the sea. It's got a definite ring to it, but perhaps West Kent may have more cohesion for us. Strategic planning is likely to be done by just one person, a mayor, for 2 million people. They would have until today determined where the housing was going to go. Now looks like it's got to be a government minister. So I suspect we don't have to worry about that. So therefore, on balance, the best of a bad option is to go with option 3A, which has been worked up over the last year. And finally, as this is such an important decision, when we get to the time for voting, I will be asking for a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harper. Councillor Harwood.
However, I think it is true to say that there are synergies in the east. I mean, the M20, for example, and some of the growth areas. We've got a very large growth area right on the edge of our borough in the east, which is very close to growth areas in Ashford. So, but as I say, I think what gets done to us gets done to us. We just need to plan and make sure that we are at least prepared in some way to greet whatever we wake up to find. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harwood. The Mayor shouldn't make too many opinions, but he made some valid points there. Thank you. Councillor Springett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Parfitt probably put into words better than I could have put into words my concerns, and actually Councillor Harper well said. Absolutely, it's going to be a disaster in my opinion, but there we go. Planning. Councillor Harwood, you said it very, very well, but the other night you were busy supporting development in the only little bit of national landscape that we have. So can you reassure me, please, that we will fight damn hard to protect the little bit of national landscape that we have and come up with whatever we can do to protect the rest of our countryside, which is unprotected? You're busy trying to increase the national landscape and supported a proposal the other night, effectively, to cover a whole load of it in solar panels. We haven't got much protected land. We are going to be drowning in housing, and our residents really, really need to know this. We need to protect the little bit we have really, really vehemently, and I would like your support on that going forward. Thank you.
I may ask Councillor Harwood to come back on that, but before I do so, Councillor Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I welcome the recommendation this evening. I think, as Councillor English said, if we were going on a journey, this is not where I'd be starting from, and I share those views. And I'm an older cynic than Councillor Harwood is, and I've been practising cynicism for much longer as well. But I share those concerns that my colleagues have just expressed. I do welcome the opportunity and some of the benefits that unitaries can bring, not just to Maidstone, but to Kent as a whole. The idea of having a single authority that covers both highways and planning and brings together those sort of synergies has got to be a good thing. Rather than working in different directions, it's an opportunity to work together to actually benefit proper planning and the interests of our residents. I was pleased that the leader mentioned devolution, because I think devolution is critical to this. I was a member at the upper tier authority when devolution was being proposed, and I voted in favour of an extension to try and get the Devo Max on behalf of Kent residents. I believe that he opposed that quite stringently. It's interesting to hear what he's now saying about devolution. I just wonder whether he's got his things in a row properly on that. But the point about devolution is, and it takes us back, for those of us that have been around a long time, to when Medway and Kent was one thing. And what we had in those days was called the Kent and Medway Structure Plan. And that's where all the infrastructure and that strategic planning was done jointly on behalf of the whole county. I don't believe that bringing that strategic planning down to the level that we currently have it as, which involved what we were doing as an authority just before the election, has ever been successful. It sets borough against district, district against district, resident against resident, and that's not helpful. So I kind of look at the proposals this evening, and I would describe, and I did to a couple of colleagues earlier, that this is the least objectionable, and therefore the way that we need to work forward. But we do need to recognise those challenges And we do need, as a council, to work diligently to build in the safeguards that I believe that we as a council should have. Mr Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Mike Thompson.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And I shall be brief. Some people will know that I worked for 30 years as a senior officer for KCC, retiring in 2008, but returning to do some guest appearances after that. It is only in the past 3 years that I've become an elected member of Maidstone Borough Council, but that time has been sufficient to give me some insight into the workings of local democracy. I was involved quite heavily and closely in the LGR round that took place in 1998, which saw the then KCC mount a strong rearguard action to secure its own continued existence, albeit at the expense of the creation of the Medway Unitary. Many people said at the time that it was too small, and lo and behold, it is now pronounced to be too small. My own deep personal view is that this whole LGR process is something we can do without. Yes, some kind of reform is needed, but not these root and branch proposals we now have. However, it does seem to me that there is some momentum behind change. I cannot support the KCC option 1 and see this as little more than a rerun of what happened 27 years ago. Of all the other options, 3A does seem to me to be the least undesirable, and I shall be backing it this evening. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm a cynic as well, Councillor Harwood, and I think what you said was had a lot of truth in it. I'm quite sure there's a senior civil servant at this very moment who has drafted a submission to the Secretary of State already. But having said that, let me just remove the cynicism. I actually do support the local government review. The reason is we haven't had a proper local government review for 50 odd years. And I think what we've ended up now is a mixture. We have county councils, we have district councils, we have city councils. We got a huge mixture. And I think the unitary idea is the right way forward. I do believe that, because it brings all the main activities under one roof. So I totally support that. What I don't support is option 1A, which I think is, it doesn't meet any of the criteria that's put forward by the government. So I think that's an accident waiting to happen straight away, quite frankly, and I don't know why it was ever even put forward. Of the other options, the one that obviously fits the best is option 3A. And it does so for practical reasons. It fits in with the NHS, with the police, and also it fits in historically as well, because Maidstone has been part of West Kent as a whole. I mean, you only have to walk into Brenchley Gardens and see the Lutyens Memorial to the Royal West Kent Regiment, and that regiment recruited all over the West Kent area. And indeed, I would say, a bit of history, the 4th Battalion, which we now celebrate as part of the Kohima statement at Remembrance Sunday, was the 4th Battalion, which was raised actually in Bromley, which is now part of London Borough, but was part of Kent. So the West Kent has historical significance, and it certainly has the best fit. However, I do have a problem with it, and it's already been raised, and I think it's very well put forward again by Councillor Harwood, that a huge percentage of land in the West Kent area is protected. So we will end up with a huge, if the housing targets are what they are, then we're going to be under a lot of pressure. There's no doubt about that. But having said all that, it is a question of balance. And looking at it as a whole, the balance to me still remains with option 3A. However, option 4D has 4 unitaries, which I'm a little uncomfortable with, but includes Ashford. And that might be a safer bolt hole for us, if I may use that word. So I would like the Cabinet just to have a final think about that, because I do think the issue of housing is going to be something that's going to come back and possibly bite us in the future. But my inclination, as I said, is to support 3A, because I think it's the best fit, but I would like the Cabinet to have another look at 4D. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There seems to be a cross-party cynics club being formed tonight, I think, maybe. I would like to make a comment on maybe the future. I think, again, what's going to be decided will be decided, and we will have fairly minimal input into it. What strikes me, though, is that we are going to have a big new council with so many members. I look around this chamber, and every person here knows their ward, knows their villages, and is fairly au fait with all of the landscape around the borough. It strikes me that what's going to happen is that we're going to have these big councils, and there are going to be lots of councils who really don't know anything about areas that they might become involved in, and therefore I feel it's really, really important that we look at the next layer down. Town councils, parish councils, right? And I haven't actually seen anything much yet about how they will be involved. And what worries me is that they are not going to be up to it. Within my ward we have 5 parish councils. One is really well experienced, big, but it's got a lot of money. The other smaller ones are really, they're relying on volunteers, as we all know, and they are not as knowledgeable, as experienced, and they will not be able to respond, to be able to communicate properly with the new councils. And I think it's really important when we're looking at the detail on going forward, that we make sure that we look at how we are going to improve, if you like, the communications between the council and the parish council and the town council, and also bring those parish and town councils up to speed on things. And that's my comment on what I think we need to make sure that happens in the future as we develop the detail. Thank you.
That's certainly a valid comment, but of course I have noted Cabinet members taking note of that. Any further people? Councillor Thompson, Stephen? Councillor Gooch? Councillor Gooch after Councillor Thompson. Thompson first.
Green is called. Try that one. You're kind. Mr. Mayor, we are here as part of an enabling motion for the government, as has been put forward. I shall try to briefly sketch some lines on the road for us in bright yellow paint, hopefully in the right places. We need joined up councils. We need the good parts of the unitarisation model. These things are cogent and persuasive. Sadly, Jim did not fix it for Vince and Roger in February, and we did not get the devolution priority programme or the predecessors. You must do LGR first, and don't ask about mayors until you have. Councillor Perry will tell us, I think that's the Penelope and Odysseus move. Keep them busy. Wait until the boss comes home. So, taking note of contributions from the public and from councillors and hand-wringers on all sides, I do not agree that we give up and say that what's being done to us will simply be done to us. We've been invited to respond to 6 criteria, and I think we should interrogate them. Criterion 1 demands robust evidence, but the old recycled county council network PwC modelling and poorly tested assumptions preclude that robustness. If the foundations are weak, the house we build on them will be weaker still. Criterion 2 pursues size and efficiency, but ignores the democratic cost of getting to such a utopia. Representation thins, power concentrates, and the promise of efficiency risks becoming a cover for remoteness. Criterion 3 offers us all better services, but reorganisation has not eased the pressure on social care, children's services or homelessness. Structural change without proper funding simply shifts the burden, it does not lift it. Criterion 4 entices us with engagement, but too often, even this evening, we see consultation without empowerment outside this chamber. There must be means to shape decisions, and any guarantee to do so must be obligatory and binding. Criterion 5 embraces devolution to regions, but if that passes power into fewer, less accountable and privileged hands, it ceases to be devolution at all. Strategic footprints must not become platforms for local executive rule untempered by real accountability. And then there's the promise of neighbourhood empowerment, but without resources or authority, it's a hollow promise. I would like to say that much that is technically sound has been concentrated into these papers, Mr. Mayor, and we are grateful to our officers. But the criteria do not offer proper powers to redress imbalance or replace broken assumptions with sounder principles of sustainability and resilience. Going west may prove a motorway to growth with ghastly dimensions, while the east is left to languish in powerless poverty. There is no shiny new future for us if the new maps do not enable us to decide which industry thrives and where, or whether constructing housing in fields we need for food, not just wine, is a developer juggernaut we cannot stop. The weather map showed that Storm Claudia went west
Thompson,
last weekend
drawing to a close,
and dropped a month's worth of rain on Monmouth. Does anyone else find it strange that these business cases have nothing to say about such things? Perhaps our letter, Mr. Mayor, will. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to have it recorded, this council's thanks to the officers that have worked so damned hard to get all this information. This is crammed full of carefully thought through data, and an awful lot of people have worked awfully hard, and by the way, they've done their day job at the same time. I think we are here to see this through, like it or not. We've got to do it. It's our responsibility. I will be supporting 3A, but I wouldn't be able to do it with such relative cautious confidence had it not been for the hard work in all these words and all this data and the member briefings and the behind the scenes talks. So I would like the thanks recorded, please, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much.
You can take it from me, Councillor Gooch, that not only will I be happy to second that, but I think just about everybody else in this room is also happy to second that. Please record members' thanks to all officers for the work that took place. Councillor Field.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my own consideration of this, I hear what members say about planning, and I share those concerns. I think if you look at the map on page 42, one thing that strikes me is it doesn't include flood zones, and I think once you start to put the flood zones, the character of the rural part of the southern part of the borough and its rural character is very clearly at threat. However, in my professional life, I've worked at Medway Council, I've worked in the NHS here in Kent, and more widely. And I would just like to encourage the Cabinet to consider, to echo Councillor Jeffrey's comments on the synergies with other statutory authorities. It is important. I am in favour of unitary authorities in general. I echo Councillor Cook's comments that for the general public who are not as hyper engaged with local political structures as members in this chamber, it does not make any sense that who I pay for my parking permit and who paints the lines on the road are different, and various other responsibilities that are too numerous to list between two different authorities, getting a drop curb for a driveway, etc. It's all frankly incomprehensible to your average resident. So I do think that unitary authorities are a positive thing. I think we can all just hope that the government actually follows through and delivers the fullness of their reorganisation proposal, because I do think that local government reorganisation without devolution will be a horrific mess. But to come back to the point around synergies, the two key points I think I would like to leave with the Cabinet are, first of all, from my experience at Medway Council, the size of the population is incredibly important to the economic viability of the successor authority, and that needs to be considered. And the second is that with the mess that is health and social care in this country at the moment, with a rapidly ageing population, it's very important that there's synergy as far as possible for the provision of those services. I would draw members' attention to Essex, which the NHS has inexplicably carved into 3 chunks. So you have a social care authority that can't effectively communicate very easily with the NHS, and it makes for frightfully difficult partnership discussions in that part of the country, and there are others that I could mention as well. So for that reason, I would reluctantly support 3A, and as I say, hope that the government actually follows through on devolution, although I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I search and do not see any further speakers, so I therefore refer back to Councillor Harper. No? Okay, Councillor Jeffrey to sum up first.
Thank you. I'd like to come back on a couple of the points that have been raised. We are, as a local planning authority, local housing, that is obviously very much on our minds, but we do need to remember that if we get devolution, and I believe we should, then the strategic side does get taken into a different realm, and hopefully we'll resolve some of those bits. But I fully accept it's a risk. Councillor Harper and Councillor Draginski have talked about the parish councils, town councils. Obviously, we are hopefully going to have a town council, and we had a parish council conference last week. We do want to try and boost the parish councils in terms of their voice and knowledge and understanding and all of that, because absolutely that hyperlocal stuff is really, really important, which is why we're going down, made those moves. And then Councillor Cook talked about highways and planning together, obviously education on top of that. It's all a good thing. One phone call, one councillor managing all of that stuff. Councillor Field talked about some of that duplication, and I'm always reminded of trying to work out which council to go to depending on whether the leaves are above a drain or slightly below a drain, because it's different. Utterly bonkers. In the wise words of Councillor Thompson, 3A is the least undesirable, which is why I do hope we vote for it.
Thank you. We now have the required number for a recorded vote. I now ask officers to do it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, so if I just remind you, the vote is to refer the motion that's been moved by the leader and seconded by the deputy leader to the Cabinet. So if I could ask you in turn whether you are voting for, against or abstaining. Councillor Barwick.
For.
Councillor Burke.
Against.
For.
you. Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cleater. 4. Councillor Coates. 4. Councillor Conyard.
4.
Councillor Cook.
4.
Councillor Couch. Sorry.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Dawes.
Against.
Councillor English.
4.
Councillor Field.
4.
Councillor Fort.
Abstain.
Councillor Gooch.
4.
Councillor Greenham.
4.
Councillor Harper.
Reluctantly 4.
I'm not sure we got a category for that. Councillor Harwood.
Abstain.
Councillor Houlihan.
Abstain.
Councillor Jeffrey.
4.
Okay. Councillor Kahili.
4.
Councillor Millam.
4.
Councillor David Nagy.
4.
Councillor Mark Nagy.
4.
Abstain.
4.
Councillor Parfitt.
Abstain.
Councillor Perry.
4.
Councillor Povey.
Abstain.
Councillor Rodwell.
4.
Councillor Round.
Abstain.
Councillor Spooner.
Abstain.
Councillor Springett.
Abstain.
Councillor Sweetman.
4.
Councillor Michael Thompson.
4.
Councillor Stephen Thompson.
Abstain.
Councillor Chabinsky.
Against.
Oops. Councillor Wales.
4.
Councillor Wilby.
4.
Councillor Dan Wilkinson.
4.
And Councillor Joe Wilkinson.
4.
Thank you. So, members, I'm sure you were keeping a tally as things went along. So the voting was 27 votes for, 3 against and 10 abstentions. So the motion will be referred to Cabinet. And as I'm sure you're aware, Cabinet will be meeting on Wednesday evening to come to a conclusion. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, members. That draws the meeting to a conclusion. I declare the meeting closed.